This week's Excellence in Education winner is Stephen Book, who is with Stony Creek High School. That's part of the Rochester Community Schools. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate it.
We received a letter from your nominator, and I want to read a little bit from it.
Great.
Mr. Book is an excellent teacher, cares about every student, is meticulous in preparing his classes and being sure to find ways to keep students engaged. He not only thrives on being a great teacher, but also is the director of the Stony Creek musical each spring for the last 5 years. This last year, he took on the play Little Mermaid, and it was spectacular. He also coaches girls basketball, and he never stops working with the kids to make them feel important. And you have 3 little ones at home under the age of 5. How do you do it, Stephen?
My wife's a saint, first of all. Let me say that. She's also an educator at the same school as me. So we do a lot of juggling. Our kids are heavily involved in all that we do. And Stony Creek High School is kind of a second home to them. And you mentioned The Little Mermaid last year. Selfishly, I would like to say I had the perfect Ariel, I had the perfect Ursula, and I did. But my little ones got to be in the show. So they were little fish in the background. But yeah, it's a juggling act. It takes a village, and we have got a great village at the high school that we teach at.
Something happened to you at 5, or in 5th grade, I should say. Something happened to you in 5th grade that made you want to become a teacher. Tell me about it.
Sure. I had a 5th grade teacher, first male teacher I'd ever had. I didn't know that guys could be in this profession prior to 5th grade. The teacher's name was Steve Filarecki. I hope he watches this. And Mr. Filarecki, the first day we walked into school, there was a life-size cutout of Michael Jordan on his door, and it had the inches marks for how tall Michael Jordan was. And I remember looking up at Michael Jordan and being like, oh my goodness, there's Michael Jordan here. There's this Harry Potter book over here that had just come out that I'd never heard of, but I was intrigued by the cover. And there was this the rules for this game called Spelling Baseball on the wall. And I was a sports fan, and I would love to read my last name's book. So it kind of, came with the territory. And then the guy started teaching. And this is just when I first walked in. And he had me hooked. He became not just a great educator to me and my colleagues, but he fostered relationships first. And I think that was the best intro I possibly could have had into the profession, that the curriculum is so important. And I do not want to ever tell anybody that the curriculum is not an important part of the classroom. But he instilled in me that the relationships with the students, that's the chief number one priority. And that is what I've carried with me now, 30 years later. 28 years later.
Talking about the curriculum, I know daily lessons are important, but you changed things up a little bit. You have history raps that have gone viral. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. This is my 12th year teaching, so this was probably my first or second year teaching. I was teaching 9th grade world history. I like to joke that I was the welcoming committee to the social studies world for our 9th grade students at the high school that I teach at. And I was looking for a way to connect these two concepts that I had a day before a break. And I was like, I have to get these things in before the break. I wrote a rap in my bedroom the night before. I performed it for the kids holding this piece of paper. I had a Michigan State hat on that I had on backwards. And I think I knew that somebody was filming it, but they posted it on YouTube, one of my first classes ever, and it's gotten a few views since then.
So you just continue doing this?
I haven't done as many raps lately, but I am a big fan of hip hop. I always joke that if I could create any elective course that I could teach in the high school, it would be the history of hip hop, and I would love to teach that at some point.
What's been challenging for you personally as a teacher?
Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges over the last couple of years with the pandemic. March 13th, 2020 sticks out as a date in my mind that I'll never forget. I was driving students home from a field trip when my principal called me on the drive home, and I expected the worst, but I wasn't expecting this news. And essentially it was, we're closed indefinitely. I had musical rehearsal for Mamma Mia that night with 200 kids involved. We're closing that down. We're not going to be back at school tomorrow. And then we weren't at school, obviously, and it was a school day. The 3 students I was driving in my back seat, their phones lit up like a Christmas tree. Everyone was texting, school shut down, this pandemic's here. It felt very surreal, very movie-esque. And we got back to the school, and yeah, sure enough, they went their separate ways. I didn't see them in person again until, wow, the following spring, the next school year.
Yeah.
So
why do you teach?
Why do I teach? I teach because I've had great mentors, and those great mentors starting in 5th grade and then into middle school and then into high school and then even my college professors. The teachers that I emulate in the classroom goes back to that relationship piece. I teach because there's students that don't have those relationships that I have in my classroom with adults or with their colleagues, and the relationships that they could save a life. They could be the strongest relationship, especially with a male that they've had in their lifetime up to that date. And those relationships continue long after they're in my classroom. They continue. I just passed a student of mine on Grand River walking to class, and I shouted out my window as I was on my way here, and said hello to her. And I haven't seen her since her graduation day, which was actually, she was a class that graduated during the pandemic. So the first time I'd seen her in person since the pandemic. Really cool to see. So it's I teach because I've had great people show me what teaching can mean to me, and I hope that I've instilled that into them over the last 12 years.
Well, you're changing lives. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Stephen receives a $1,500 check from the Michigan Lottery, and his class at Stony Creek High School in Rochester Hills receives a $500 grant. Excellence in Education Awards, sponsored by the Michigan Lottery, providing more than $26 billion to public education since 1972.